Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, compassionate degrowth, etc., etc. I want to thank you all again for your comments, discussion. It's always very, very good. I I spent a lot of time watching YouTube links, but I am overloaded with the YouTube links right now. My queue could go on for days and days, but you all know this. I feel like I repeat myself, but that's what you do when you have a YouTube channel. You tend to go over the same information, but that's all right. This is the information that we are interested in, hopefully. So real quick, just an update on the t-shirts, y'all. If you ordered one already, I got it, and I'm ordering the shirts in order to make them next week. Ordering them probably early next week. So any last minute over the weekend people who want to order a t-shirt, please let me know so I can get you in to the production schedule next week so I can make them up, send them out. Everybody get their shirts. Bada bip, bada boom, bada bang, whatever. So I want to start with this. Oh, by the way, I think somebody was asking me for information, and I'm sorry because I blew it and didn't respond to your comment. I apologize. I probably have to go back and look for the comment, but the t-shirts come in black, gray, or army green, like a army greenish color. Any size you want. So just let me know the size and the color you want. Email blackbearnews@gmail.com and let me know the details, and you can pay at the link, the PayPal link below. Okay. Sorry. Just had to get that in. So I want to start with a comment from Vintage Violet that I rather enjoyed. She says, ITA, our culture of shiny, happy self-indulgence is no longer just for fun. It has become consumer privilege. That term really hits the nail on the head. Just yesterday, I noticed people putting out their garbage bins. Really noticed how full and overflowing they are, as if it was a contest to see who could cram the most into them. For fuck's sake, I compare it to how much less garbage we had in the 70s and 80s when I grew up. Much smaller cans, etc., and we were happy. Imagine that. There's a real entitlement to consumption, even a brazenness about it. People's very identity is wrapped up in what we buy, spend, consume. It's downright ugly. It doesn't even seem to occur to people to try to spend less, even when faced with ever increasing bills, having no money in saving, etc. Most have no idea about want versus need, no idea how what they do impacts other life on our planet. I'm fairly disgusted with the masses, even disappointed in myself, having been caught up in it in the past and still hooked into it many ways out of necessity. Unfortunately, wake up won't happen until it is far too late, and almost surely is now. Indeed. I wanted to start with this article from the BBC. Many people were commenting on this and linking this. The headline is Climate Change, Rain Melting Greenland Ice Sheet, even in winter. Rain is becoming more frequent in Greenland and accelerating the melting of its ice, a new study has found. Scientists say they're surprised to discover rain falling even during the long Arctic winter. The massive Greenland ice sheet is being watched closely because it holds a huge store of frozen water. And if all of that ice is melted, the sea level would rise by 7 meters, threatening coastal population centers around the world. 7 meters is 21 feet. Precipitation usually falls as snow in winter rather than as rain, which can balance out any melting of the ice in the summer. That's how it's supposed to work. The scientists studied satellite pictures of the ice sheet, which reveal the areas where melting is taking place. And they combined those images with data gathered from 20 automated weather stations that recorded when rainfall occurred. The findings published in the journal The Cryosphere show that while there are about 2 spells of winter rain every year in the early phase of the study period, that had risen to 12 spells by 2012. On more than 300 occasions between 1979 and 2012, the analysis found that rainfall events were triggering a melting of the ice. Most of these were in summertime when the air often gets above zero. But a growing number happened in winter months when the permanent dark of the polar winter would be expected to keep temperatures well below freezing. The lead author of the study, Dr. Marilena Oltmans of the Geomar Ocean Research Center in Germany, told BBC News, "We were surprised that there was rain in the winter." It does make sense because we're seeing flows of warm air coming up from the south, but it's still surprising to see that associated with rainfall. Another scientist on the study, Professor Marco Tedesco of Columbia University in New York, said that the increase in rain had important implications. Even if it falls during winter and then quickly refreezes, the rain changes the characteristics of the surface, leaving it smoother and darker and preconditioned to melt more rapidly when summer arrives. The darker the ice is, the more heat it absorbs from the sun, causing it to melt more quickly. This opens a door to a world that is extremely important to explore, Professor Tedesco said. The potential impacts of changes taking place in the winter and spring on what happens in summer needs to be understood. A smooth surface, particularly a lens of ice, will allow meltwater to flow over it much faster, and being darker means that more of the sun's rays are absorbed, further speeding up the warming process. Pictures taken by a British research team caught in a rainstorm on the ice sheet last year show how a bright, highly reflective landscape of snow and ice was turned into a much darker scene. Why does this matter? Although Greenland is extremely remote, a vast island lying at the northern end of the Atlantic Ocean, the sheer volume of ice covering it means its fate could have global repercussions. In stable times, snowfall in winter will balance any ice melted or breaking off into the ocean in summer. But research has shown in recent decades the ice sheet has been losing vast amounts of mass. Although this contributes only a relatively small amount to the rise of the sea level, with much of the rest coming from thermal expansion as the ocean warms, right? Water expands when it gets warm. The fear is that the flow of meltwater could accelerate as temperatures rise. 2 years ago, the BBC reported from Greenland on the risks of faster melting because of the growth of algae, which makes the ice darker and more likely to warm. The effect of algae is, in addition to darkening caused by soot and other forms of pollution carried by winds to the Arctic. This comes amid growing concerns that the region as a whole is warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet, which may be influencing the flow of the high altitude jet stream. That could disturb weather patterns in Europe and other regions. And may also explain how the flows of warm, moist air from the Atlantic are reaching Greenland even in winter. May, does, and does. What do other scientists make of this? Professor Jason Box, a glaciologist not involved in the new study, says the research builds on earlier work by him and colleagues published in 2015 that found that summer rainfall could increase the rate of melting. Their analysis found that because water has a high heat content, it takes only 14 millimeters of rain to melt 15 centimeters of snow, even if that snow is at a temperature of minus 15 C. Wow. There's a simple threshold, the melting point, and when the temperature goes above that, you get rain instead of snow, he said. So in a warming climate, it's not rocket science that you're going to have more rain than snow. Not rocket science that you're going to have more rain than snow. And it's one more reason why the ice sheet can go into deficit instead of being in surplus. Professor Box has himself experienced sudden rainstorms while camped on the ice sheet. After weeks of sunshine, it started raining on us and it completely transformed the surface. It got darker, and I became convinced only by being there and seeing it with my own eyes that rain is just as important as strong sunny days in melting the Greenland ice sheet. Not good. Not good news. Again, we know that when we are having the polar vortex situations happening in the US and in other places where it is extremely cold, where it is usually not extremely cold, that means that it is usually almost always very warm in the Arctic, where it's not supposed to be warm. And that is lending itself to the ice being in big trouble even during the winter. It's not getting the rebound that it's supposed to get in the wintertime because of the warm temperatures and because of rain, because of et cetera, warm water coming up from the Atlantic and the Pacific, and on and on. Something interesting from The Guardian: if America can find, and I just made a post about this, or I was just talking about this on Facebook today with a few people. If America can find $716 billion for the military, it can fund the Green New Deal. If we redirected the trillions spent on fruitless wars, funding Medicare for all and a Green New Deal is perfectly realistic and should have happened, as with climate change mitigation, should have happened decades and decades and decades ago. Somebody was saying that they added up all the trillions of dollars spent on war in the last 50 years, and it was some ridiculous number of monies, which we could have spent, making the world a beautiful, lovely green paradise. And instead we made it a bombed out, deforested, plastic soaked, well, soon it will be something like, I don't know, a moonscape if we keep going. At long last, the political debate in the world's richest country is vibrant with proposals that would help the most vulnerable in our society. And what do we hear in response? A growing chorus of naysayers. Just pipe dreams. That's how the Washington Post columnist Robert Samuelson referred to proposals for guaranteed jobs, Medicare for all, universal child care, and the Green New Deal. Like many other pundits and politicians, Samuelson says we can't afford such luxuries. Taxing the rich wouldn't raise enough money. We'd have no choice but to resort to deficit spending. Bullshit. Lies. Funny how some politicians have no qualms about ballooning the deficit with tax cuts for the rich, but balk at investing in the long-term health of our people and communities. Just as peculiar, the fact that the military spending cuts are virtually never mentioned as an option for freeing up funds for social good instead of war. This year, the U.S. military budget is $716 billion, and boy, is it ripe for slashing. The military budget represents about 53 cents of every discretionary dollar in the federal budget, and it's one of the biggest reasons that people so often throw up their hands and shake their heads when they think about funding innovative ways to end poverty. They don't need to throw up their hands, though. The politicians and pundits should just start listening to children. When young organizers from the Sunrise Movement recently challenged Senator Dianne Feinstein, I'm really, really trying not to just be goofy on her name, to support a Green New Deal, she told them there's no money to pay for it. She probably didn't expect those 8 and 10 and 11-year-old kids to respond immediately. Yes, there's tons of money going to the military. You old senile bat. Feinstein responded condescendingly that the military does important things with that money, or our never-ending wars say otherwise. Last year saw the highest number of civilians killed in the Afghanistan war since the UN began keeping track. Wow. Last year, more than 3,800 people, 930 of them children. About a quarter of them were killed by U.S. and NATO troops and their Afghan government allies, and most of those by U.S. NATO airstrikes and drone attacks. Thousands more were injured. Committing such mayhem doesn't come cheap. Last year alone, the war in Afghanistan in its 17th year cost about $45 billion, and that's just the immediate cost of fighting the war. It doesn't include the cost of caring for injured U.S. soldiers, let alone Afghan victims. It doesn't include training more soldiers to replace the ones occupying Afghanistan now, or the enormous sums spent on the base Pentagon budget. Most importantly, the war in Afghanistan hasn't made us any safer and isn't making life better for the people of Afghanistan or for the people of the United States, or et cetera, et cetera. To take one grim measure, at the start of the war, Afghan babies faced the fourth highest level of infant mortality of any children in the world. Today, after almost 18 years of war, Afghanistan is number one. And those soldiers that have come back from the wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and beyond, they still aren't getting the care they need. They still struggle to access Veterans Administration clinics and hospitals, and they're still killing themselves at rates advocates deem a national emergency. According to the VA itself, the Guardian reports veterans aged 18 to 34, many of whom served in Iraq and Afghanistan, have higher rates of suicide than any other group. The human war of these toll of these wars is staggering. The financial costs are breathtaking. Netta Crawford, who co-directs the Cost of Wars project at Brown University, estimated back in 2017 that total war spending in just Iraq, Afghanistan, and Pakistan was approaching $5 trillion since 2001. When we're talking about trillions of dollars, $2 trillion for Afghanistan and another $3 trillion or so for Iraq and beyond, Crawford calculates it means there's plenty of money to fund things that really do keep our people and our country safe. For just a quarter of that $2 trillion we've spent on fruitless, brutal war in Afghanistan, the National Priorities Project at the Institute for Policy Studies calculates we could instead fund more than 103,000 elementary school teachers, 112 clean energy jobs, 934 Head Start slots, and healthcare for 806,000 veterans and more than 2.3 million adults, and retrofit nearly 5.8 million houses for solar electricity. In fact, we could do all of that every year for 10 years. Compared to all this, paying trillions for war isn't an investment. It's just a loss. It's a loss at a scale that, if it were reversed, would make a Green New Deal, Medicare for all, and all the rest perfectly realistic, which would make us safer. And that, well, sums up everything that's wrong with this planet and the people that run this planet, the absolute psychopaths that tell us that we need to do this. And the psychopaths that follow these leaders and support them and think that all of this is a great idea. And this is exactly what we need to do to be safe. And now, most likely, we don't have time to turn things around. And, the more energy we give these madmen and their disgustingly destructive ideas, the farther away we get from being able to put the brakes on and possibly save ourselves. If we can't, it is a good thing that we're starting to have a national discussion about this. The likelihood of it actually bearing any fruit or bearing any change, very, very low. Very, very low. But if we don't talk about it, if we don't discuss it, then it's absolutely zero. But I think it's extremely positive that it's starting to come around again. The idea of an anti-war movement, the idea of actually doing something about climate change, instead of just like talking about it or writing articles about it or reading articles about it and going, maybe we should do something about this. That there are those folks willing to put it out there and talk about it, even if it is too late, and at the risk of becoming the all AOC all the time channel. I'm going to read another article about AOC, but this is just me delineating the way, the insane asylum that we live in. We all know this. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir. I'm not telling anybody anything new. But again, just, I'm just pointing out the hysteria that is starting to rise to the surface of the news media in response to people actually talking about real change, talking about things in reality that we could do to make life better on this planet, and they just cannot have it. They just absolutely cannot. Please, dear God, stop talking about making the world a better place, because that's just for children. That's just crazy talk. That's not adult. That's, that's not mature. That's not grown up. Let the grown-ups continue to do the wonderful things that they're doing for this planet. Pieces of shit is what they are. The ravenous hysteria over Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez just reached a new level of crazy. Sometime over the past few days, the overreaction to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez moved from somewhat strange to downright bizarre, and at times more than a little scary. On Greg Gutfeld's show on Fox News, commentator Catherine Timpf lit into the 29-year-old congresswoman from New York over her championing of the Green New Deal, quipping that the climate change initiative might even lead to cannibalism. And that's absolutely, that's exactly how insane they've gotten over this. They're losing their collective minds. I don't want to eat people, Greg, and I don't want people to eat me, Tim said. AOC, do you want people to eat you? At last week's CPAC conference, Sebastian Gorka took his shot, inspired by Ocasio-Cortez's recent suggestion that the environment would benefit from restrictions on factory farming and suggestions that Americans consider eating less red meat. They want to rebuild your home. They want to take away your hamburgers, said Gorka, the former Breitbart editor and former Trump administration official known for his Islamophobic ideas. This is what Stalin dreamed about, but never achieved. Oh my God. These dumbasses. And the heightened interest in AOC is not limited to right-wing tirades. CNN found it newsworthy that she will be the subject of a new comic book coming out this spring, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the Freshman Force. New party, who dis? New York Magazine's new cover story explores what the Democratic Socialist has wrought in its cover story headlined, Pinkos Have More Fun. Pinkos, they're bringing back this language. Commies and pinkos. The word socialism has become a kind of blank canvas on which young leftists project their political desires. Simon Van Zuylen Wood wrote, and Saturday Night Live and its send-up of Michael Cohen's congressional testimony featured Kenan Thompson as House Oversight Committee Chairman Elijah E. Cummings. Let's take a break, and then Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez will probably do a dance. Is that right? No, I was going to ask, carefully researched questions, replies Melissa Villasenor, Villasenor, playing a winking and waving Ocasio-Cortez. Given that she's been in office less than 3 months and that the obsession shows no signs of slowing, quite the contrary, an observer has to wonder where we'll be by the time 2020 dawns. Hopefully, we'll be electing a president, or about to elect a president, who's willing to bring at least some of these political platforms to bear. Will an image of AOC in a white pantsuit be cast in neoclassical copper and moved to the New York Harbor to replace the Statue of Liberty? Will there be a full-time primetime segment on Fox News devoted fully to vilifying her? That almost all of them are. The AOC Hate Hour with Ann Coulter. Could the Salem witch trials possibly be revived and moved to Queens? Ocasio-Cortez herself gets the problem. It feels like an extra job, she told the New York editor David Remnick in a new interview. I've got a full-time job in Congress, and then I moonlight as America's greatest villain or as the new hope. And this ravenous hysteria, she said, is really getting to a level that is kind of out of control. It's dangerous and even scary. I have days when it seems some people want to stoke just enough of it to have just enough plausible deniability if something happens to me. Her critics, of course, would charge that she brings it on herself, stoking her millions of followers on Instagram and Twitter with provocative views on income inequality, healthcare, climate change, and more, and with even stronger pushbacks against the trolls. But as she showed at the Cohen hearing, Ocasio-Cortez can be more capable than most at actually doing her job, being well prepared, not grandstanding and asking pointed questions that actually elicited information. Yes, she's charismatic, outspoken, and willing to endorse ideas outside the mainstream. That America can't somehow take this in stride and keep it in proportion makes me think of former Washington Post reporter Carl Bernstein's apt expression to describe our coarsened society, the idiot culture. Ding, ding, duh. The AOC furor we're seeing has plenty to do with her being a young Latina, plenty to do with her willingness to challenge the status quo. And yes, as a rookie, she has made her share of mistakes. And it has everything to do with America's divisiveness, misogyny, and celebrity obsession. The cascading insanity over Ocasio-Cortez says far more about the audience, what used to be known as American citizens and public servants, than it does about her. And that's all I have for you tonight, dear viewers. Personally, I'm having a really good time with the insanity. That's why I'm reading so much about this and talking about this. Because she's already in office. It's not like somebody that's about, Bernie Sanders was easier to slander because he wasn't in office. I mean, he is in office, but he wasn't president yet. She's in office and she's quite vocal, and she's, she is very popular and a media darling, et cetera, et cetera. But she's willing to really like poke people, and it's a beautiful thing. I just, I like poking people myself. So there you go. I think more people need to get poked, like in the eye. Those pieces of shit that think that they know better and think that they run things need to be told, you're not running things anymore, pal. There's the door. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.